Good evening. A call to order for the Wednesday, May the 8th Policy Committee meeting. Michelle, Mrs. Shope, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Tom Hankins,
Here.
Amy Levy,
Here.
and Brian Nichols.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Could I have an approval of the agenda motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just one thing, and this is from the March 6th minutes, and I'll quote it. It says, "Due to questions and revisions necessary at the administration level, the Code of Conduct and the committee proposed the policy until the May meeting." So I'm just wondering if we have an idea of when 443/447 Student Code of Conduct and Discipline will come back before the committee.
I'm glad you asked that question. I had that highlighted to ask the question.
Sure. We are working on that feverishly right now. The Code of Conduct had some, major revisions that we were looking into doing, and also just trying to wrap up, so from a timing perspective, the best time to bring it back as well. Missy and Eric and the team, I should say, are real close to it being done. And am I missing anything?
Nope, I think we just kind of paused because we weren't sure of the cadence with the new committee chair.
Sure. So we'll be ready to bring that back, actually right here in June if you want to.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to request that we bring that back in June.
Mhm.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes for March 6th and April the 10th?
Oh, we still need to vote to approve the agenda.
Thank you. All those in favor of the approval of the agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passed. March 6th and April 10th.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Actually, could we do discussion?
I'm sorry, discussion.
Just wanted to check in, did you two gentlemen have a chance to watch the meeting minutes, or to watch the meeting recording from March 6th and April 10th?
I did not.
Oh,
No.
okay, then we probably need to postpone those minutes because I would be the only one who could vote, and that won't be a quorum of the committee.
Good point. Thank you, Board Member Levy. Michelle, if you could note that we'll postpone those minutes until the next meeting. And Mr. Board Member Hankins, you and I need to go watch TV.
I'm on it.
Okay, on to the next item, appointment of Vice Chair. Board Member Hankins, would you accept the position of Vice Chair of the Policy Committee?
I will.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to policies review. 2A is student involvement in decision-making. Are there any discussions about anything on 442 that we need to add or delete that's recommended at this point?
My only question, and I think it would be a good idea for us to include at the very bottom, it says the student representative shall receive notice of and be permitted to attend and participate in any board or committee meeting, except during closed session. The representative shall not, however, be permitted to vote or make motions. I think it would be a good idea to be clear, if it is our intention, that the student representative is encouraged to participate in the discussion, even though that person can't make a motion or vote or enter into closed session. So I guess my first question is that our intention?
I'll just remark I believe I believe the student can participate in discussions. I think it'll be appropriate. I mean, that's why they have a seat up here, so I believe that should be added.
Yeah, no, I welcome it. It's just, it says the things that they can and can't do, but it doesn't include that. And so, you know, you got to think of the power balance there. If it's not spelled out, a student may not know that, yeah, you're invited to participate in discussion.
So I think we can add a sentence, or, go ahead, Missy.
Sorry. What about while encouraged to participate in discussion, the representative shall not be permitted to vote or make motions?
No, I think that's perfect. So the representative, while encouraged to participate in discussion, shall not be permitted to vote or make motions. And I would actually swap those because the motion comes before the vote. Ms. Shope, did you need me to repeat? No. Okay. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, I do need you to repeat personally, sorry.
Hey, I'm here to help. The representative, while encouraged to participate in discussion, shall not be permitted to make motions or vote.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
Yep. Board Member Hankins, your thoughts, please?
I guess I'm just going back, and I don't want to belabor the point of, because I have looked at this. I'm not sure what we're switching away from and the genesis of why we are, what was wrong that we're redoing? Or is it just clarifying something that wasn't clarified, please?
Yeah, so the first thing to take note of is anything highlighted in green is an addition. Anything that's in that pinkish color with the strike through is being removed. And if you'll notice, as you read through the information that's stricken, it describes a completely different process than what we're ending up with. So that would be the clear difference.
And let me just ask, is there something, you know, I see a lot of these policies, and I'm not sure, was there something that triggered these policy changes, or is this general housekeeping to get it in line with today's activities?
I'm not sure how to answer the question differently than I did. We review policies on an ongoing basis, and we usually review them by number groups, just so there's consistency throughout the set. But with this one, if you look at the information that is proposed for removal, it describes a process that is completely different from the information that remains. So for this policy, the edits kind of speak to why changes are being made.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Levy. So, Mrs. Shope, you've got all that, right? Okay. So can we have a motion to move to the next board meeting?
I move approval of policy 442 with the recommended edits onto the full board for first reading.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passed. Move to the board for first reading. Yes, thank you. Okay. Okay, next item is 443.7, youth gangs, first committee reading. I'll open that up for discussion. Any additions or deletions that we want to add based on the information that we received from legal? Go ahead.
Okay. Just one edit that wasn't carried over from the last meeting. Ms. Shope, if we go to the second sentence, the presence of gangs, gang affiliation, and gang-related activity resulting in student misconduct, which disrupts the learning environment, comma, threatens the safety of students, staff, and guests, and interferes with the academic process. Somehow that last part got left off. And then if we scroll down to the portion that starts with the school district of Beloit will work with law enforcement in the case of any known school-related gang-like activity. The question that we had at the last meeting is what is gang-like activity? So I'm not sure if the administration was able to assist with that. And then the other thing that wasn't carried over as a change is that same portion, the last sentence, School District of Beloit employees will receive in-service addressing gang-like activity as needed. So again, gang-like, if we're gonna use it, we should probably define what that is. And then as needed. Is the administration comfortable with that being annually or as needed? Just seems kind of vague for something so serious.
We left it at an as needed because we don't see gangs in our schools. And it goes back to your question around gang-like. I did not seek clarification on the gang-like piece. That's my oversight on that one. I did ask specifically around what we would be talking about, as I shared in the email, of course. But gang-like did miss me, unless Mrs. Beavers has something.
So we did have a conversation about this policy and some of the language in it with the Beloit Police Department and our SROs, and they concurred. We don't necessarily have gangs, true gangs, but the definition that we talked about was it's a group of people acting in, and so that's kind of what they referred to as gang-like behavior. You've got a group of individuals acting as, yeah.
So I am uncomfortable with the vagueness. Let me ask this. Is the administration okay with dropping the like? And we list it as gang activity, because it seems like that is more clearly defined than gang-like. If you have a group of kids hanging out, I mean, with that level of vagueness, that could be categorized as gang-like activity, depending on the observer and their level of authority. So if we could tighten that, that would make me more comfortable. And I'm just gonna push back slightly. We are so fortunate that we don't have gangs in our buildings, but of the list of things, and thank you for following up on that, the first one there is why juveniles join gangs and what attracts them to gangs. So that preventative, so we can keep gangs out of our schools, as we have enjoyed for years.
Right.
I think that that's the part that we may need to lean into, thankfully, because we don't have it as a current issue. But that preventative or looking for like student isolation or et cetera, so that we can be preventative rather than prescriptive.
I agree with the dropping the like part, and definitely agree with leaning in on the thought around preventative work. Ms. Beavers?
Yep, I agree with that, because I think the definition up top encapsulates gang, I think what they're getting at. I have one other recommendation, if I may. In the third paragraph, gang activity as defined in the Code of Conduct, I see that stricken through. The Code of Conduct will guide disciplinary action for specific gang-related activities. I'm just wondering if the Code of Conduct will guide the disciplinary action for any violations, or I wonder if that should be worded differently, only because years ago they removed there used to be an enhancement in the Code of Conduct that was gang-related, and you could add that as an enhancement, and that is no longer and has not been in the Code of Conduct for years. So just bringing that to somebody's attention. I don't know if that is worded the way that we want it to be worded.
No, I think that's helpful, and it may make sense to strike both of those sentences. And then again, we're using gang activity, not gang-like. So is the administration, knowing that we're going to focus on prevention, are you still comfortable with as needed, or would that be an annual training to alert remind staff and alert new staff of those preventative measures.
I still believe as needed is what we discussed, what I discussed with the team. So I believe as needed is still warrant. Can we go back to, I just need to make sure, Missy, this is new, you just brought it up. The code of conduct will guide the disciplinary actions for the specific gang-related activity. You're saying let's get rid of that?
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, the code of conduct will guide disciplinary actions for violations, but we no longer have, we used to have a code that was.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So it would be like a fight, and then you could add an enhancement of, it was a gang-related fight, way back in the day. We no longer have that.
So
I don't know what it was.
Are you suggesting that we add it back in or that we just delete?
I don't believe that there is going to be a recommendation to add it back into the code of conduct. What if we want that sent, I'm fine, like Mrs. Levy said, is striking it, but I'm just wondering what we're trying to say there, because we don't have
That wording in the
anymore. We are going to use the code of conduct if there is if disciplinary action is needed, but I don't even know what that's, it kind of doesn't even
It's-
go anymore.
Yeah, it sounds like since the enhancement doesn't exist anymore,
Yeah.
the sentence is not
It's
necessary.
not valid, yeah.
Yeah, so I would be fine with removing that second sentence as
agree.
well.
I would agree.
I just had a question on the term gang. And again, I apologize for not being up to speed. Is a gang two people or more, or?
It's
is that
defined in the
defined
second
anywhere?
paragraph of the policy.
Sorry.
Second top of the
Identifiable group or club, but I'm looking at, I'm just asking, is a gang two people?
If you have two people in your group or club, I would say yes.
I would submit two or more.
Okay. I'm just asking a question.
Yeah.
Are you recommending an edit
Yes.
to include that a gang is two or more people?
If we agree on that, yes.
Okay.
It's a vague term, gang, and sometimes you may need to, Missy goes back to enhancements, but, two guys beating up on another guy, is that a gang or not? I don't know.
I wouldn't see that as a gang.
No.
So yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of that edit.
What would you see it as?
As two people who are engaged in a fight,
Okay,
I wouldn't see that as a gang.
all right. 3 people?
I mean, I think we could sit here all night
I
and,
agree.
and
I
deal
just-
with numbers, and I just don't think that's helpful. I think the point of policy is to give direction to our administration, but not jump in the weeds of the day-to-day operations. I think our administration is smart enough to interpret the policy and use it to apply in our buildings.
I have a little bit of input on this. As you most of you know, I came here from California, so gangs were around and they were present. So I can assure you that if gangs show up in the city of Beloit, we're going to be on this like quick. So back to the policy. So we're going to change the last line of paragraph. We're going to eliminate the code of conduct on paragraph 3. Paragraph 4, we're going to change gang-like to gang-related activities as needed, correct?
No, we just said gang.
Relate, I thought we were going to add related, make it related. No? Did I miss that?
I thought we just said gang activities. So did you say, I don't remember saying related.
No, we're just dropping like,
Just like,
because
okay.
gang-like is
Okay.
not
Yep,
clarified,
okay.
gang is.
All right, very good. And everything else is good? Okay.
Which was which? We just added. Well, actually, Michelle, read that first sentence. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Michelle,
please.
The presence of gangs, gang affiliation, gang-related activities resulting in student misconduct,
It's
which
just a
disrupts.
learning.
We crossed out which, so we got to add which back.
No, we didn't, okay, so that last sentence in the first paragraph should read, "The presence of gang affiliation, and gang-related activities resulting in student misconduct which disrupts the learning environment, comma, threatens the safety of students, staff, and guests, comma, and interferes with the academic process."
I guess
If-
on my version, the word which is
Crossed out.
crossed out.
Because if you put the word which in, you're leaving the sentence hanging. Without the word which, you're making the statement I think you're trying to make. Because if you
Go
say.
ahead, Board Member Lee.
So
Which
which in
disrupts-
my version that I just downloaded is highlighted in green, which means it's added in. Is
So
that
which
not the
is?
recommendation? Yeah, within a school is crossed out, and which is highlighted in green.
Thank you. That's what I've got too. I just printed these this afternoon.
Okay,
My version is all.
perhaps I downloaded an earlier version for you and I, Dr. Garrison.
That's why I'm reading what I'm reading. Thank you.
Actually, no, I take that back. I printed this on April 24th. So, thank goodness my printer puts the date.
It sounds like the sentence is hanging out there waiting for something else to be said.
But it says which disrupts the learning environment.
Misconduct, which
Disrupts the learning environment, will add a comma, threatens the safety of students, staff, and guests, comma, and interferes with the academic process.
Yeah, thank you.
That's why I
agree.
think you don't need the word which. But I'll leave it in.
So in honor of beating a dead horse, gang-related activities resulting in student misconduct disrupts the learning environment. You need the which.
Yeah, I agree. Any other comments?
I move approval of policy 443.7 to the full board with the edits discussed.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Okay. Next policy, item C, 445, student interviews. I had a couple of things. In paragraph 2, based on the feedback that we got back from the questions asked via legal, was that to kind of stick with the law enforcement term and not add in other agencies. So I'm asking the question, what's everybody's feeling on that of deleting in paragraph 3? Then that would say with in close cooperation with law enforcement for the safety and well-being of students and staff.
I can't think of, outside of law enforcement, any other outside agency besides Child Protective Services that would interview a student. Is there something that I'm missing, administrators? So I would be fine with law enforcement and/or Child Protective Services personnel may interview students, unless someone opposes to that verbiage.
I agree.
I agree also. Okay. And, yes, I've got something else, yes. Okay, moving down to paragraph 4. The building principal or designee may be present during a student interview with outside agency personnel unless the student or their parent or guardian requests otherwise, and eliminate his/her/ and just stay with there, which is completely all-inclusive.
Okay. So let me address that before I go to the policy. I think gender is important, and I am in favor of us being gender inclusive and not eliminating gender. And Board Member Nichols, one of the things that I really appreciate about you is your consistency in requesting and soliciting input from those who are impacted by the actions our board will take. I can speak for the last 4 years that I've served on policy. We have been intentional about being gender inclusive. And if that is to change, I don't think it's okay to make that change without speaking to the students and the staff, who are the main two groups that are governed by our policy. So I'm curious if that is something that you would be interested in doing, is getting input from students and staff with respect to how they feel about gender inclusion versus gender erasure.
Thank you, Board Member Levy. I hear what you're saying. I just, in my mind, there is all-encompassing, all-inclusive. It covers everybody. They, their, them, themselves, theirselves. That's all-inclusive. It covers everybody in the world. Students covers everybody. It's been in the dictionary for hundreds of years, and I just feel strongly that it's covering everybody, and I think that's more inclusive than anything.
So I would just like to point out, first let me back up because you didn't answer my question. Are you opposed to receiving feedback from student and staff with respect to whether or not they prefer gender inclusive language or gender erasure language before we as a committee make a drastic change?
Well, I thought that I did answer your question because I don't see the words there or them or they or students or whatever erasing gender. It's all encompassing. It covers everybody, regardless of their gender.
Well, it does, in my opinion, erase gender because there's no specificity there. You don't know how the student identifies their gender by erasing the gender language. And my question is, are you opposed with getting feedback? You've been very clear on your position, which I respect that. Are you opposed to getting feedback from students and staff? Because our policy governs the board, student, staff, and guests in our district. So the bulk of that is students and staff. So are you opposed to receiving their feedback and allowing that to impact your position?
And how would you propose that we do that in a timely fashion?
We do it the same way we do anything else. We ask the administration to ask.
Could I ask Board Member Levy, if it was up to you, how would you rephrase that sentence?
I wouldn't rephrase it.
Well, how would you state it then?
How would I state what specifically?
Unless a student or his, her, their parent or guardian, I believe that's where you're at with that, to be erasure? Unless I'm wrong, sorry.
No, could you repeat your question, please?
How would you rephrase that?
I wouldn't rephrase it.
Then
I would
what
keep
would
it as it is.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
okay.
May I? Let me see if I can clarify that for you, Tom. So Board Member Levy's suggesting, as it was originally written, is his/her/their. Okay. Honestly, for me, the other thing about that is from an English grammar standpoint, if we need to say his, her, theirs, slash, 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 all, you know, it doesn't read smoothly. It reads, you know, anyway, that's my viewpoint.
So I guess my last question before we move on is, again, I really respect how in every other instance you have been willing to reach out to those that are impacted and get feedback. So my question is this different for you? And if no, then I completely trust that our administration has the capacity to reach out to students and staff and ask them if they want gender-inclusive language or if they want gender erasure where you can't determine what the gender is. And I believe that's in line with where we are with our strategic plan, with curriculum, with making sure that students can see themselves in curriculum. I want to make sure that students can see themselves in policy. I use she pronouns. But if someone else uses he, if someone else uses they, I welcome them seeing themselves, how they identify in policy. And so that's what I mean by the erasure. With the more generalized language, there is no gender identification available.
Can I add something to the thought? I think one of the things that we have to work on at this point is, you know, if there's going to be a change across the board, we have to have that full board thought in place as well. As it stands, we do have a strategic plan that speaks to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and in our strategic plan as it's written, inclusion is there. It's clearly written out that way, and so we would have to have more difficult conversations around this thought and changing it, even if we go out and ask the question. I'm just being honest with you. So we don't have, I always try to make things a little bit more clear. We would have to have a much deeper conversation, more than just putting it out to the staff. It'll be, or to the students or to the population. It'll be a much greater conversation because we will be going back on what we talked about in our strategic plan as something that we adopted to something that will possibly be changing if we move in different directions. And so, board president, not board president, board chair, I should say, Nichols, there's some, thoughts there that I believe we need to have more conversations with, Board President Johnson around, a direction in which we would need to go. Because again, this is going to be a much greater conversation than just it's going to be a much greater conversation. And I've done these before, and it's not like, let's just ask the question and then walk away from it. It's a much greater community conversation. And I think it's already been answered based off of the strategic plan as it's written. But if we are going to look at moving away from that, there's going to be a much greater conversation because we'll have to go back and change some things from even our strategic plan perspective.
Well,
but that's food for thought. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. I appreciate your input. I would just say that, last night we had a similar issue and it passed 4-3. And so we've had one other done that way earlier in the year. So, you mentioned taking it to the full board. Well, we did last night and the full board passed it.
I think the full board did pass that policy change. But then we have a lot of policies, a whole lot of them, that have that language in them. And so we would have to go and start doing that for each and every policy that comes up versus, again, that's the direction of the board, right? I have to go with that. However, if this comes up each and every time, I think it leads to more divisiveness versus more us trying to figure out what is it that we really want. Because again, in our strategic plan, it says X, and if we go in that direction of, doing it at the board level each time, I think it can lead to different conversations. And I want to get it right for the entire community, versus doing it individually as it comes up from space to space. And so as a district administrator, I believe that does warrant a deeper conversation that I believe I need to have with Board President Johnson to figure out what direction she would like to go in as we start to address these thoughts, because Board Member Levy is correct, and that is in a lot of our policies. It's in a lot of them. I've been here for a year and 4 or 5 months now. It's in a whole lot of them. And so it's something to think about, that's all.
Well, could I ask a question? You mentioned surveys. So before we changed all these policies, did we survey all the students?
I'm not sure. The process began before I was elected to the board in 2020, but you still haven't answered my question.
Okay.
Are you interested in community input on anyone in the community who's impacted, but definitely students and staff, because that has been your record in the past, that you want to bring in voices and get input. Is this situation, would you follow that same cadence?
I would if those other instances that you're referring to were also addressed with the community. And
What do you
at this
mean?
point, well, at one of the board meetings, I brought up academic achievement, and we obviously haven't just had a community hearing, a community listening session about that. So I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but I'm just saying, you mentioned you brought it up, and I'm answering your question. Is that's just one issue that I brought up 3 or 4 months ago, and to date we haven't had that. We haven't brought the community in and asked them those questions.
So are you saying, and the point of committee work is to get in the weeds, so we don't have to do it in regular board meetings? So are you saying that your support for hearing community voices on the gender issue is contingent on whether or not we have a hearing that you requested for academic achievement? Which I think is important.
Academic achievement is the most important thing we're here for.
I just said I believe it's important, but my question is, does your support for hearing community voices around gender inclusion hinge on whether or not you get a hearing on very important academic achievement?
No, that is not. That is not. It's just an answer to one of your questions. So, so my recommendation is that we table this until June, and we want Dr. Garrison, you and I, and Board President Levy, Board President Johnson will have a discussion, and we'll go from there. Fair enough? Fair. Okay.
So are we going to table all policies that identify gender?
I don't think there's.
I don't think in the next few, Board Member Levy, I could be wrong, but I don't think in the next few that we have.
We would also table student searches, code number 446, because there's one. I've got one in there too.
Okay, there's one in there?
Yeah.
On the back side, I see it now.
Okay.
So what?
I apologize, I had to step off to the
That's okay.
side.
No more.
Which policies are you recommending that we postpone until our June 5th?
445 and 446.
Okay, then I guess that would conclude our meeting.
Okay.
Actually, we have the discussion.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Is that a motion then, that we table?
That would be good if somebody would put it into a motion.
So just a point of clarity from the parliamentarian's perspective, if you table something, that's killing it unless you attach a date, or you could postpone to the next meeting. So just wanted to make sure we were clear on what our two options are.
Thank you, Board Member Levy. I meant till the next policy committee meeting, which is June 5th. Yes, Mrs. Shope.
I just want to offer a suggestion for this particular policy that might solve the issue in this policy, even though your issue is a bigger conversation. In this particular policy, you could say, unless the student or the student's parent or guardian requests otherwise. And then you're taking out the his, her, there that's creating the postponement of this policy, because we do that in other policies where we say the student or the student's parent or guardian. We've had that in other policies. Just offering a suggestion.
I appreciate that, Mrs. Shope. I'm glad you're here. That makes perfect sense. So,
I'm actually not in favor of that. I don't like kicking things down the road. I think we should address it if the president and vice president and school board and the superintendent want to address. It sounds like our committee chair is on board with getting community feedback. We're here to make decisions, and I don't want to kick it down the road. I want us to make a decision and move forward.
Board Chair Nichols, I believe the original thought fits better in our conversation with yourself, myself, and of course, Mrs. Johnson sitting down and discussing this before our next June 5th meeting is appropriate. That's my recommendation.
thank you, Dr. Garrison. So let's postpone it until June 6th. June 6th, council, and we'll have it set up a discussion.
Thank you.
So are you calling for that motion?
Yes.
Okay. I move approval to postpone items 2C through 2F of this evening's agenda until our June 5th meeting.
Can I just ask discussion on that?
We can't start discussion
just-
until there's a second.
Okay, thank
If
you.
there's not a second, then it dies and we wouldn't
I
discuss.
second, I second. My question is, sorry,
Is there just,
yes. And we also talked in the last 15 minutes about board policy and this being, are we opening up all of our board policies with this language? Or are we just addressing these on our committee agenda tonight with June 6th?
I think we're going to have Dr. Garrison, Board President Johnson, and myself are going to sit down and talk about the policy, the whole procedure and the whole language as it relates to the strategic plan.
Okay, thank you.
Point of order, could I get a clarification on the motion to postpone items 2C through 2F? Was there a date attached, or was it till the
The
next meeting?
June 5th
June 5th.
policy
Or 5th,
meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, June 5th. So we have a first and a second. We've had the discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passed. Moving on to 2F, no, I'm sorry, 3A. The reason I brought this up is I was looking through this, just perusing some of the policies over the last few weeks, and one that came to my attention was the purchase and bidding requirement 672.1. It's listed on the agenda, and that was written 4 years ago, and a lot of things have changed in those time and since that time, and I'm wondering, based on the financial situation in the district and the $10.8 million budget shortfall that we're going to have going into into 2025, if we should, what the board's, or what the committee's thoughts would be if we go through and look at some of these financial numbers, and if we should make them a little bit more restrictive going forward. So I'll open the floor for discussion.
So my only concern, I'm not saying I'm necessarily opposed to that, but if you'll notice, items 2A through F are listed as either discussion and action or action. Item 3A is listed as discussion. So because of the way it's posted, the public wouldn't have any idea that this is something we would take action on at the committee. So we're not able to do anything besides discussing this
Right.
tonight?
No, I agree.
Okay.
Yep, that's the way I want, yeah, thank you. So do you have any suggestions, or?
I'm comfortable with the policy as it reads.
Board Member Hankins, do you have any idea, thoughts?
Well, I understand what you're getting at. I'm just wondering, how would we change it to make it, without getting, micromanaging every purchase that we make? You're looking at changing the limits?
I'm not suggesting we micromanage every,
Right.
I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just suggesting that we may look at some of the limits and, back them up just a bit. Not dramatically, but just a
Okay.
bit. To make, we got a lot of tough decisions to make.
Right.
The district does in the next few months. So
I'm
that's-
all in favor of looking at that to see if there's a way of putting some more
Okay.
constraint on it.
I'm just wondering, do either of you gentlemen have any suggestions for edits that would be made to the policy? While you're thinking about that, I'll just add a few thoughts. I am completely confident in Dr. Garrison. I think he has done a wonderful job with reducing the deficit budgets that we have faced and to come in with a balanced budget. So I don't have any inclination that this team would spend recklessly or in a way that would need additional approval from the board beyond the parameters that are listed. And please keep in mind, all purchases that are made by the district are reviewable by the board, even if it doesn't come up on a board or committee meeting. You can always get in touch with with Mr. Chady and review those. And if there's anything that's a concern, I would say that you could request it to be an agenda item as a board member, but that policy didn't go through. But you could work with the president and the superintendent to hopefully get that on an agenda.
I'd like just to add, since we're having this is just discussion too, so over the past year and 5 months here, the district has asked me to reduce our budget by $20 million. Not the 10.8, 20 million plus, because that's where I'm working with right now. And I don't think there's been a superintendent that y'all asked to do that since in the Beloit history. And that's the work that I'm having to work through right now, and I'm doing it as diligently as I can. And that's just what it is, right? We working through a deficit budget, and that's what what I walked into and what we inherited as a board. It's very interesting though, because we haven't spent anything. We don't have the money to spend it like that. We've been working off of ESSER. If I had the money, I'm being honest, if I had the money, and I'm not making light of the thought. I'm just, if I had the money, maybe I could be spending it, but I don't have the money, so how can you spend what you don't have? Everything that we have, we've budgeted for, has been approved at the board level. Additionally, when I look at the history around this, and I think it's an interesting conversation too. When you look at the history around this policy, it changed because it was so hard to have a board meeting to get $7,000 approved when I have a $100 million budget. And things were getting, as I understand it, was getting lost in the wayside. And so that was the other side of part of the conversation that was had with me in relation to why we did go to some of these changes, because it was so hard to get to the full board to have a budget conversation to approve $10,000. Now, I can't speak for other people's mismanagement of money, but that is not my track record here, nor was it when I came here. And so I don't plan on that being a thing. However, as a discussion, right, if the board would like to, make the changes, naturally we have to bring this back, and I'll see the changes that you all have. You will see the changes that I have, and we'll go through the conversation like we would normally go through it. I think it's very important to note that, again, the board is asking me now to reduce $20 million, not just this 10.8, because this is over 2 years now for me, and for my team, and for the board, and so if that's not management of funds correctly, I don't know what is. And our goal is to bring back a sustainable budget that meets that. And so, again, it's just hard for me to spend what we necessarily just don't have right now. I just want to make sure I bring that into the conversation too, because I think the way this was written back then, Chair, was they changed these numbers because it was so hard to keep coming back to get things approved when we needed them approved, especially in like annual stuff, like WASB fees is, the fees that we work with from a board perspective is what, $10,000? How much is it, Michelle? Do you remember? 8,000?
I think WASB is like 10 or 12,000.
Correct.
Board docs is like 15.
Correct. And these are the things that we work with, period. This is who we use. But we have to do this every single time. And I think that's kind of why I got a little too close to the weeds. But I just want to bring that thought to the conversation.
Just for clarification, Mrs. Shope, were you saying, was that an annual number, Okay. Okay.
I would just like to throw in that, and very respectfully I say this, but when we make policy, it goes out into the future. In our present climate, yes, I agree, Dr. Garrison, and you've been very fiscally responsible, and I appreciate that. The climate of today may not be of that tomorrow. And I, again, go back to micromanaging, and I don't know if we need to change any of that, but as Mrs. Levy said, go back to the inclusion, and those words were not being talked about 15 years ago, but maybe they need to be revisited. So it always changes, and as a policy we set, it has to be carried forward into the future. We can't predict what's going to happen. So I just wanted to bring that into conversation. I don't think there's any reflection on you personally. Thank you.
So I have a question for my colleagues. If it is not a concern that the administration is spending up to the limit without board approval in a way that makes any one of us uncomfortable, then why is it that we're revisiting this policy?
Honestly, just for input from the committee in thoughts, and I mean, these are, for me, this is a great discussion that, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate everybody's opinion and viewpoint on it, and that's what I was looking for. So, mission accomplished.
And I concur, I'm sorry, Amy.
No, go ahead.
I concur with that. I think doing due diligence is always a good thing.
Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to see where we were headed with this, because if we're reviewing policies that we're not concerned about, like if something is happening and it needs to be addressed through policy, then that to me makes sense. But if we're discussing policies and it sounds like we don't have a concern with the way administration is allocating funds, I just don't see how productive that is, if there's not a concern there.
Thank you, Board Member Levy. I appreciate your input and your stance. Thank you.
I would just like to add into that is part of our strategy here as a board to be proactive and also to weigh that into it and not waiting for something to happen that we need to take action on. And I know as we can't forecast anything that's going to happen, everything that's going to happen in the future, but I think it's worth visiting certain rules, and especially in this climate of budget constraints. To me, it's just something worth looking at, not to say we have to change it. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hankins. Okay, moving on to item 4A, next meeting date, Wednesday, June the 5th at 5:30. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned at 6:26.